So in building this cockpit, I've spent probably about £1,100. I've totted it all up now. These are all my receipts. I've done a rough total and tried to break it down a little bit. Now £1,100, quite a lot. That's not necessarily the cost. I think it's important to say of the cockpit. I bought a lot of things on an experimental kind of basis. I haven't used everything, but quite a few tools and things like drill bits and so on, which you may, if you were doing something like this, you may not have to buy those things. The backlighting experiments, that took a bit of money. Various things. So, but generally, I think £1,000 is a pretty good estimate. And the breakdown really is £600 of that, more or less, is the electronics and the things to support the construction of that, so the wires and so on. And again, breaking that down, the bottom boards were a significant proportion. The switches and so on, I haven't really broken it down that far, but the switches are probably like £150. And then the construction of the frame and so on. Basically the timber, MDF. I used far more MDF than I needed, really, for reasons I won't bore you with. But again, if you plan that all out well in advance, and you could probably use cheaper materials still. I mean, MDF's not expensive, but you could do it on a much tighter budget at the end of the day. The other thing, obviously, that doesn't take into account is all the parts I had beforehand, and significantly the 7-inch monitor for the GPS screen. I mean, that was quite an expensive monitor, even though it's not a great monitor, but it was £130 or something. If you look on eBay and Amazon, there are some very, very cheap VGA capable monitors, particularly the ones that are intended for mounting in cars for the reversing cameras and so on. So you can get them for like £30, and you may have to buy a power supply, but it's just a plug-in, 12 volt or 9 volt or something power supply. So much cheaper options there. Yeah, again, I mean, obviously things like the yoke, the controls, the throttle quadrants, the the VR Insight panel, which I had already, the Elite radios, the Cytec radio panel, the trim wheel. Those things I had already. If you figure those into the cost, it more than doubles, really. So a sound system as well, the monitors, the computer. But where do you stop? Is it worth doing something like this? Absolutely yes. I mean, it's been hugely satisfying thing to do. It's just great fun. But more than that, I mean, now I'm at the stage, it's not technically finished really. I've got things like the exposed wood and stuff. If you watch some of the videos, you'll still see some of that. But I've stopped doing that for now because I'm just flying it around, and it's just it's so much more fun to experiment with the Twin Otter systems when you don't have to worry about stupid fiddly buttons in the virtual cockpit. Everything's to hand, and so I've been doing that, and you probably notice I've been doing some videos about the autopilot, and I'm learning about the autopilot. Really, I mean, that's just something I'll go on to say. Really, I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing in terms of making videos about the Twin Otter. I will be doing some. I'm trying to just find a level. I'm trying to find some good ways of filming the cockpit, which is quite difficult in itself. So I'm experimenting with that, but also just what kind of videos to do. I started off the autopilot videos in a tutorial sort of sense, but it's really difficult to do that without scripting it fairly tightly, and that's it's a different way of working. It's less spontaneous, and so in some ways it's not as interesting to watch. It's a lot of work as well. So we'll see. You know, I'm still experimenting with that. I've done 2 autopilot videos, got 1 more to do, hopefully, and I might do some more of that similar sort of stuff. But what I quite like doing is just to ride along. You know, I'm doing this, I'm going here, I'm figuring this out. Just, you know, ride along and see. What I don't want to do is put up. I've resisted putting up lots and lots of I can't think of a good adjective, but lots and lots of basically crap videos, because that's the death of a YouTube channel. And you know, I think I've got a bit of a thing going on my channel where most of what I put up, and this is through choice, is it's got something to say. And the minute I stop doing that, I think it's when people will stop watching. So it's important to strike a balance there. But the ride along stuff, I think that's going to be quite interesting, as long as it's, you know, edited in an appropriate way. So look out for more of that. Just in terms of exploring the systems, you know, I'm still quite impressed with this Twin Otter extended implementation. The autopilot is what I've been focusing on at the moment. I've got some documentation here. This is not the Aerosoft documentation. This is, I can't remember where I got this, on the web somewhere, and it's actually for a different aircraft. It's for the Beechcraft C-12, which is a similar kind of class of aircraft, if you like. It's a twin turboprop, but it's got the same autopilot fitted, the AP106, and you know, this, given that this is a detailed description of the real world autopilot, pretty much everything it says in here applies to the Aerosoft implementation. The only thing that I think that's missing is there's an extra function in the nav mode which is called linear deviation. So if you're tracking a VORTAC instead of the straightforward VOR, you can actually fly a parallel track to a radial. So you can be tracking a radial but be flying parallel to it, a linear distance off track, if that makes sense. That would be a really useful function, but we can't do that in the Twin Otter, in the Aerosoft Twin Otter, as far as I can tell. But everything else is there, and this is a good description. You know, I might, if I can put a link to this in the maybe in one of my autopilot videos, I'll put a link to this in the description. Some more of that sort of thing, really. I've got loads of Orbix stuff in the Pacific Northwest which I've been buying up and I haven't explored yet, and I've resisted visiting those airfields because I want to fly to them properly, you know, as if I was doing it in the real world. So we've got some exploration to do. At some point I might, and not yet, not for quite a while yet, but I might, you know, put together a review of the Twin Otter Extended itself. I'm not ready to do that yet because I haven't explored it enough. You know, all the other systems, I haven't done any of the detailed checklist stuff. Everything's implemented so I can do that. I might make a video on, in fact what I think I'll probably do is tack some of that checklist stuff on piecemeal to each video, so I cover it, but not in a big, you know, I don't want to do a video where I just walk through all the checklists because I'll just put people to sleep. But yeah, a lot of exploration of the systems to do, and as I say, I'll do some sort of review to pull it all together eventually. I want to get my ATC sorted out. I had a brief dabble with the multi-crew experience, which you probably saw on the shakedown video, but I haven't really attempted to do that in detail. I've not had good experiences with that in the past. I've been looking at It's Your Plane, which includes a thing called Super ATC. I was enthusiastic about that, and then I became less enthusiastic. I can't remember why now. I need to write notes to myself or something. That's an alternative. It's a similar voice recognition interface for the built-in ATC in Flight Sim. Well, it's more than that, but for my purposes, that's what I want. I don't really want the automation stuff. You know, there's no point in spending £1,000 building a cockpit full of physical switches and then driving it all through some virtual co-pilot under voice control. That doesn't make sense. And the other thing with that is they don't really play nice together, because if I have a virtual co-pilot and I say, turn on the autopilot, for example, now my switches are out of sync because the autopilot's on but the switch is off. So there you go, it's just another compromise in doing this sort of well, being involved in simulation really. So the next thing that's going to happen, hopefully within the next month, I'm going to get the Iris yoke. They're, as far as I understand, they're being assembled now. They've not posted anything in the last week on their Facebook page, but I'm quite looking forward to that now. When I bought that, I actually signed up for that on the Kickstarter campaign before I even decided to do this, or even conceived of this cockpit project. So I was a bit lukewarm in signing up for that when I did it, but I'm glad I did now, because if that works as well as they say it's going to make a fantastic difference to this cockpit. And also, well, some other advantages to that. Hopefully, again, they haven't been specific enough about this, but if it presents to Windows as a regular joystick controller, I'll have back programmable buttons on the yoke. So, in particular, I want one for the control wheel steering button, which is the thing where if you hold it down, it suspends the autopilot. Then you can change the pitch and then let it go, and so it resets the pitch hold in the autopilot, which currently the only way to do it is to flip the master switch off, reposition, then flip it back on. Talked about this in the autopilot videos. So I want that on the yoke, and hopefully the Iris yoke is going to be programmable in that way. I can also have a push to talk for when I do get the ATC stuff working. Otherwise I'm just going to have to do those on switches, that are sort of somehow taped onto the onto the yoke handle if I stick with this yoke, or if that yoke's not programmable. The other thing I've been looking at is somebody pointed me at some new rudder pedals, some fabulous looking rudder pedals. They're quite expensive. They're I can't remember, it's in euros, about 130 euros or something, and they're from some Eastern European country. But I might order a set of those. They look pretty damn good. So we'll see. That almost the problem with ordering, all these extra excellent quality rudder pedals, superb realistic force feedback yoke. Every time you go up a notch in one part of the control system, it puts everything else to shame. So I'm starting now to think about these throttle quadrants. And anyway, I'm not going to go on about that. And then I'll just be looking at various other ancillary bits of software really. I want to get because I'm going to start doing IFR procedures, and I'm going to start flying ILS approaches and stuff. I want to get a good iPad app that supports, that gives me all the planning tools and the approach plates and so on. So I'm going to be looking around for something like that. There's a thing called FSNE board version 2 is what I've heard is a good thing to get. What else? FS Commander I've heard about. I think it's called FS Commander for flight planning. I'm going to be running exclusively with real world weather, Active Sky Next, which works great. It'd be great if I could get Active Sky Next to run on my desktop PC, which is over there, rather than on this PC. Mainly so I can do the flight planning and check the weather and so on. I'm sitting at a desk. It's difficult. The alternative is here to get some sort of, swing down platform for the mouse or something like that. Just, it's a bit of a fiddle at the moment to do things on the flight sim PC that require the mouse and the keyboard, because I've taken such pains to exclude the mouse and the keyboard. So you can't win really. So I might look at that. I just have to figure out the Sim Connect stuff to get Active Sky Next running on the other computer. It's possible, it's designed to do that. So we're just going to have a look. Oh shit. Okay, that's the end of that. Start that again. And in fact what I'm going to do is, for the purposes of illustration, I'm going to also switch my generators on. Forgot to do that. I think I've done something. I think my engines have stopped. That wasn't part of the plan. Oh dear. Right. Luckily we got over that ridge. We got a bit of gliding distance here. I'm not sure what happened there. I switched my generators off. That's what happened. And because I was on external battery instead of internal battery to do the start, that's messed things up. Okay, everything's back. I need to switch off the generators and restart the engines. Hopefully that's going to work. Props forward, throttles to idle, fuel leaders off, and that should give us a right hand start without breaking anything. Right engine started, left engine. Alright.